I, 35F, recently found out that our maid, Maria, 28F, has been stealing money from my husband Daniel's, 37M, wallet. This discovery has turned our lives upside down and led to a series of events that I never could have imagined. Daniel and I have been married for 8 years. We met in college. I was studying business administration, and he was pursuing engineering. We hit it off immediately, bonding over our shared love for old movies and hiking. After graduation, we both landed good jobs in the city and decided to get married. The first few years of our marriage were great. We were both focused on our careers, working hard to establish ourselves. Daniel quickly climbed the corporate ladder at his engineering firm, while I made a name for myself in marketing. As our careers took off, we decided to buy a house in the suburbs, a beautiful 2-story home with a big backyard, perfect for the family we hoped to start someday. However, as we got busier with work, maintaining the house became a challenge. We were both working long hours, often coming home exhausted. The housework started piling up, and it became a source of stress for both of us. That's when we decided to hire a maid. We put out an ad and interviewed several candidates. Maria stood out from the rest. She was young, energetic, and seemed genuinely excited about the job. She told us she had moved to the city from a small town, hoping to save money for college. Her story touched us, and we felt good about giving her this opportunity. For the first year and a half, everything seemed perfect. Maria was efficient and thorough in her work. She would come 3 times a week, and the house was always spotless when we got home. She was also great company, always ready with a funny story or a kind word. We started inviting her to stay for dinner occasionally, and she became almost like family. About 6 months ago, things started to change subtly. Daniel began mentioning that he seemed to be misplacing money. At first, it was small amounts, $10 or $20 here and there. We didn't think much of it, assuming he was just being forgetful or spending more than he realized. But as time went on, the amounts got larger, and it happened more frequently. Daniel would say things like, "I could have sworn I had a $50 bill in my wallet, or didn't I have more cash yesterday?" I suggested he start keeping better track of his spending, thinking maybe he was just underestimating how much he was using. Then, about a month ago, Daniel withdrew $300 from the ATM to pay for some car repairs. He put the money in his wallet, intending to pay the mechanic the next day. But when he went to pay, over $100 was missing. That's when we realized something was seriously wrong. We started discussing who could be taking the money. The only person who had regular access to our house besides us was Maria. But we didn't want to accuse her without proof. She had been so good to us, and the thought of her stealing seemed unbelievable. I decided to pay closer attention. I started keeping track of how much cash Daniel had in his wallet before and after Maria's visits. To my shock, I noticed that small amounts were consistently missing after she left. Still, I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I remembered a story my mom had told me about falsely accusing a coworker of theft, only to find out later that she had been mistaken. The incident had created a lot of unnecessary drama and ruined a good working relationship. I didn't want to make the same mistake. So, I came up with a plan. I bought a small hidden camera and set it up in our bedroom, where Daniel usually leaves his wallet. I felt guilty about this. It seemed like a violation of Maria's privacy. But I needed to know the truth. The next day, I watched the footage with a heavy heart. There it was, clear as day, Maria entering our room, opening Daniel's wallet, and pocketing some cash. I watched it several times, hoping I was somehow misinterpreting what I was seeing. But there was no mistaking it. I was devastated. We had trusted Maria, treated her well, even considered her part of our family. And this is how she repaid us. I felt betrayed and angry, but also sad. I wondered what could have driven her to do this. Was she in some kind of trouble? Why didn't she come to us if she needed help? I debated whether to confront her directly or tell Daniel first. Eventually, I decided to talk to Daniel. This affected him directly, and I felt he had a right to know before we decided how to handle it. When I showed him the video that evening, Daniel was just as shocked and hurt as I was. He had always liked Maria and had defended her when I first suggested she might be the one taking the money. Seeing the proof left him feeling betrayed and angry. We spent hours discussing what to do. Part of us wanted to call the police immediately. But we also remembered Maria's dreams of going to college and how she had talked about supporting her family back home. We wondered if there was a way to handle this without completely ruining her life. Finally, we agreed to confront Maria together the next day when she came for work. We would give her a chance to explain and possibly make amends before deciding whether to involve the authorities. The confrontation didn't go as planned at all. When Maria arrived the next morning, we sat her down in the living room. I could tell by her face that she knew something was wrong. Daniel started by asking her if there was anything she wanted to tell us. She looked confused and said no. Then, we showed her the video. I expected her to break down, apologize, maybe offer an explanation. Instead, her whole demeanor changed. She became defensive and aggressive, yelling at us for spying on her and invading her privacy. But what happened next shocked us even more. Maria turned to Daniel and said, "You know why I took that money? Because your wife here has been cheating on you." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had absolutely no idea where this accusation was coming from. Daniel looked at me, his face a mix of confusion and doubt. Before I could even process what was happening, Maria continued, "I've seen her sneaking around, making secret phone calls, and meeting with some guy at a cafe. I was just taking what I deserved for keeping quiet about it." I was stunned. I vehemently denied the accusation, telling Daniel it was completely false. I explained that I had no idea what Maria was talking about, and that she was clearly making this up to deflect from her own wrongdoing. The situation quickly spiraled out of control. Maria kept insisting she had proof, while I desperately tried to convince Daniel that she was lying. Daniel, caught in the middle, didn't know what to believe. Eventually, Daniel asked Maria to leave, saying we needed time to discuss this privately. As she left, she shouted, "You'll see. I'm telling the truth." Once she was gone, I broke down crying. I couldn't believe that our trust in Maria had not only led to her stealing from us but also potentially damaging our marriage. I tried to explain to Daniel that there was absolutely no truth to Maria's claims, that I had never cheated on him and never would. Daniel said he wanted to believe me, but Maria's accusation had planted a seed of doubt. He asked if there was any reason Maria might think I was cheating, had I been acting differently lately, or spending more time away from home. I thought hard about this. The only thing I could think of was that I had been meeting my sister, Sarah, at a cafe recently to help her plan her wedding. Sarah had wanted to keep the wedding a surprise from her boyfriend until she had everything planned out, so I had been a bit secretive about these meetings. I explained this to Daniel, offering to call Sarah right then and there to confirm. Daniel said he believed me, but I could still see a hint of doubt in his eyes. We spent the rest of the evening talking, with me reassuring Daniel of my love and fidelity, and him trying to process everything that had happened. We agreed that we needed to figure out how to handle the situation with Maria, but for now, we were both emotionally exhausted. As I lay in bed that night, unable to sleep, I couldn't help but wonder, how did our simple discovery of a theft turn into this mess? How could Maria, someone we had trusted and welcomed into our home, do this to us? And most importantly, how are Daniel and I going to get through this and come out stronger on the other side? I'm writing this post because I need advice. How do we handle Maria? Should we involve the police about the theft? And how do I conclusively prove to Daniel that I've never been unfaithful? Any suggestions would be greatly appreciated. Update when it's been 2 weeks since my last post, and I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. A lot has happened, and I'm still trying to process it all. The day after the confrontation, Daniel and I decided to fire Maria officially. We sent her a formal termination letter, citing theft as the reason. We also informed her that we would be filing a police report about the stolen money. We felt this was necessary to protect ourselves and potentially warn future employers. However, things took an unexpected turn when Maria showed up at our house the next day. She was crying and begging for her job back, saying she desperately needed the money for her sick mother. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. I remembered how she had told us about her mother's health problems when we first hired her, and how she was sending money back home every month to help with medical bills. But then Maria switched tactics and started threatening us. She said if we went to the police, she would tell everyone about my affair. Even though it wasn't true, she claimed she had pictures of me meeting with a man, who was actually my brother-in-law, helping with wedding planning. She said she would post these on social media and tell all our friends and family that I was cheating on Daniel. Daniel and I were shocked by her behavior. This wasn't the Maria we thought we knew. We told her to leave immediately, or we would call the police right then. She left, but not before shouting that we would regret this. True to her word, later that day, we started receiving messages from friends and family asking if everything was okay. Apparently, Maria had posted a vague status on Facebook implying that she had discovered a dark secret about her employers and was torn about what to do with this information. While she didn't explicitly accuse me of anything, the post was enough to start rumors. Some of our acquaintances even started commenting, speculating about what this secret could be. I was furious and humiliated. Even though none of it was true, the mere implication was enough to make me feel like everyone was judging me. Daniel was upset too, but I could tell the seed of doubt planted by Maria was growing. He started asking more questions about my daily routines, checking my phone when he thought I wasn't looking, and being unusually quiet and distant. It broke my heart to see how this lie was affecting our relationship. I decided to take action. I reached out to my sister Sarah and her fiancé, Jack, explaining the situation. They were appalled and immediately offered to talk to Daniel. We set up a dinner where they explained about the wedding planning and showed Daniel all the messages and plans we had been working on. Sarah even showed Daniel the secret Pinterest board we had been using for wedding ideas. She explained how she wanted to surprise her fiancé with a dream proposal, which is why we had been so secretive about our meetings. Jack confirmed that he had no idea about the wedding plans, and expressed his gratitude for my help in planning this surprise. Seeing this proof seemed to ease Daniel's mind a bit, but I could tell he was still struggling. He apologized for doubting me, but said he couldn't help feeling insecure after Maria's accusations. He admitted that the stress from work and this situation with Maria had brought up some old insecurities from his past relationships. Meanwhile, the situation with Maria escalated. She started showing up at Daniel's workplace, causing scenes and trying to talk to him alone. She would call our house multiple times a day, sometimes crying, sometimes angry. It got to the point where we had to change our phone number. We decided to go ahead with filing a police report about the theft. The officer who took our statement advised us to also file for a restraining order against Maria, given her harassment. He explained that her behavior constituted stalking and that we had grounds for legal protection. The process of getting the restraining order was stressful. We had to gather evidence of Maria's harassment, including call logs, screenshots of her social media posts, and statements from Daniel's coworkers about her showing up at his workplace. We also had to appear in court to testify about why we felt threatened. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, we got the restraining order approved. It prohibited Maria from coming within 100 yards of us, our home, or our workplaces. It also banned her from contacting us in any way, including through social media. We thought this would be the end of it, but we were wrong. A few days ago, Daniel received an envelope at work. Inside were printed copies of text messages, apparently between me and someone saved as love. The messages were intimate and clearly implied an ongoing affair. They included references to secret meetings and plans for a future together. Daniel came home that day, his face pale and hands shaking as he showed me the messages. I felt sick as I read through them. They looked real, with dates and times that corresponded to times when I was actually out of the house. But I knew I had never sent them. I realized with horror that Maria must have fabricated these messages somehow. But how could I prove it? Daniel was clearly struggling, torn between his trust in me and the evidence in his hands. I tried to point out inconsistencies in the messages, words or phrases I would never use, references to places I've never been. But for every point I made, there seemed to be something in the messages that matched up with reality. It was as if Maria had taken bits and pieces of my real life and woven them into this elaborate lie. Daniel said he wanted to believe me, but he was having a hard time reconciling the woman he knew with the one portrayed in these messages. He asked if he could look through my phone, and I agreed immediately, hoping this would prove my innocence. But as he scrolled through my messages and emails, his frown deepened. He pointed out that there were gaps in my message history that coincided with the dates on the fake messages. I realized with a sinking feeling that I had recently deleted old messages to free up space on my phone, not realizing how suspicious this might look in light of these accusations. We stayed up most of the night talking. I went over every detail of my days, trying to account for every minute that was mentioned in those fake messages. Daniel listened, but I could see the doubt in his eyes growing. By morning, we were both exhausted and emotionally drained. Daniel said he needed some time to think and left for work earlier than usual. As I watched him go, I felt like our marriage was slipping through my fingers. I feel like I'm living in a nightmare. Our once strong marriage is being torn apart by these lies, and I don't know how to fix it. How do I prove my innocence when all the evidence seems to be against me? How do we stop Maria from causing any more damage? I'm at my wit's end and could really use some advice. Update 2. It's been a month since my last update, and I'm relieved to say that things have finally taken a turn for the better. The truth has come out, and Daniel and I are working on rebuilding our trust. After receiving those fake text messages, I was desperate to prove my innocence. I remembered some advice from the comments on my last post about digital forensics. We decided to consult a professional to examine the messages. Finding a reputable digital forensics expert wasn't easy. We had to do a lot of research and ask for recommendations. Finally, we found someone with good credentials and experience in similar cases. The expert spent several days examining the messages. It was an anxious time for us, waiting for the results. But finally, we got the news we were hoping for. The digital forensics expert quickly determined that the messages were indeed fake. They had been created using a messaging app that allows users to generate fake conversations. The expert showed us how the metadata of the messages didn't match up with real text messages. He also pointed out subtle inconsistencies in the formatting that indicated they were generated rather than genuine. The expert provided us with a detailed report explaining how they could tell the messages were fabricated. Armed with this information, we went back to the police. At first, they were hesitant to reopen the case, but when we showed them the forensics report, they took our new evidence seriously and started investigating Maria more thoroughly. The investigation took a few weeks, during which the police looked into Maria's background and interviewed her previous employers. What they discovered shocked us. Maria had a history of similar behavior with previous employers, including theft and attempted blackmail. She had managed to keep this hidden by using different names and moving between cities frequently. The police called us in for an update last week. They had managed to track down Maria and bring her in for questioning. Under pressure and faced with evidence of her past crimes, she finally confessed to everything: the theft, the false accusations, and the fake messages. It turned out that Maria had a gambling addiction, which was the real reason she needed money. When we caught her stealing, she panicked and made up the cheating story to distract us. She thought if she could break up our marriage, she might somehow avoid consequences for her theft. Update 2: Maria revealed that she had been planning this for months. She had been carefully observing our routines and gathering information about us that she could use to make her lies more convincing. The details she included in the fake messages, like the names of cafes I frequented or events I had attended, were all things she had overheard or seen while working in our house. The police have charged her with theft, harassment, and creating false evidence. She's now facing serious legal consequences for her actions. They also informed us that Maria might have stolen from other employers, and they're investigating those cases as well. When we got home from the police station, Daniel broke down and apologized profusely for ever doubting me. He admitted that he should have trusted me completely, regardless of the so-called evidence. We had a long, emotional conversation about trust, communication, and how we can strengthen our relationship after this ordeal. Daniel confessed that his doubts stemmed partly from insecurities rooted in a past relationship where he had been cheated on. He realized that he had never fully dealt with that trauma, and it made him vulnerable to Maria's manipulation. He's agreed to seek individual therapy to work through these issues. We've decided to start couples therapy as well to work through the impact this situation has had on our marriage. While I'm hurt that Daniel doubted me, I understand how convincing Maria's lies were, and I'm committed to working through this with him. The support from our friends and family has been overwhelming. Once we explained the whole situation, everyone rallied around us. My sister Sarah and her now husband Jack were particularly supportive, helping us clear up any remaining doubts among our social circle. They've been inviting us over for dinner regularly, providing a safe space for us to relax and remember what normal life feels like. We're also taking steps to protect ourselves in the future. We've installed a proper security system in our house, complete with cameras and an alarm system. We're being much more careful about who we trust with access to our home and personal information. This whole experience has been a harsh lesson in trust, both its importance and its fragility. While I'm relieved that the truth is out and Maria is facing consequences, I know we have work to do to fully recover from this. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. Daniel and I are committed to working through this together, and I believe our marriage will ultimately be stronger for having weathered this storm. Thank you all for your support and advice throughout this ordeal. It really helped me stay strong and focused on finding the truth. Update 3: It's been 6 months since my last update, and I'm happy to report that things have significantly improved for Daniel and me. The legal proceedings against Maria concluded last month. She pleaded guilty to all charges and has been sentenced to probation and mandatory counseling for her gambling addiction. She's also been ordered to pay restitution for the money she stole from us. The judge took into account her cooperation with the investigation of other thefts she had committed, which led to her receiving a lighter sentence than she might have otherwise. Daniel and I have been consistently attending couples therapy, and it's been incredibly helpful. Our therapist has guided us through exercises to rebuild trust and improve communication. We've worked through a lot of the issues that arose from this incident, and our relationship feels stronger than ever. One of the most significant changes we've made is implementing a full transparency policy in our relationship. We now have open access to each other's phones, emails, and schedules. While some might see this as extreme, for us, it's been a way to rebuild trust and ensure that there's no room for doubt or misunderstanding. It's not about policing each other, but about creating an environment of openness and honesty. We've also made changes in our professional lives. Daniel has switched to a new company where he feels more valued and less stressed. His new job has better hours, which allows him to be more present in our relationship. This change has made a big difference in his overall happiness and has reduced his vulnerability to manipulation. As for me, I've started my own small business working from home. This decision was partly influenced by our experience with Maria. We're both more comfortable now without having strangers in our home regularly. My business is a digital marketing consultancy, and it's been growing steadily. The flexibility of working from home has also allowed me to achieve a better work-life balance. Our friends and family have been incredibly supportive throughout this process. We've become closer to those who stood by us during the difficult times. We've had to distance ourselves from a few people who were quick to believe the rumors about us and slow to accept the truth even after everything came to light. It's been a bit painful, but it's also shown us who our true friends are. We've also taken up new hobbies together, like dance classes and weekend hiking trips. These shared activities have helped us reconnect and create new, positive memories to overshadow the difficult ones. Last month, we completed a challenging trail that we've been working towards for weeks. Reaching the summit together felt like a metaphor for overcoming the challenges in our relationship. While the experience with Maria was undoubtedly traumatic in a way, it's made our marriage stronger. We've learned not to take each other for granted and to always prioritize our relationship above outside influences. We communicate more openly now, addressing small issues before they can grow into bigger problems. We've also become more involved in our community. We've started volunteering at a local organization that helps people with gambling addictions. It's been a healing experience for us, turning our negative experience into something positive by helping others who are struggling. Looking back, I'm proud of how we handled the situation and grateful for the lessons we've learned. Trust is precious and can be easily damaged, but with effort and commitment, it can be rebuilt even stronger than before. To anyone going through a similar situation, my advice would be to stay strong, seek support, and never give up on the truth. It may take time, but the truth has a way of coming out eventually. Also, don't be afraid to seek professional help. Both individual and couples therapy have been crucial in our recovery process.